Tonight, the investigation into the Nolan Wells death bombshell. Joining us tonight, Nolan's friends' lawyers fight back.
Two numbers. That is the entire defense in this case. Two numbers, spoken by two lawyers on national television 1 month after an 18-year-old went to an island and did not come home. 4:30 and 6 o'clock. If those two numbers hold, 3 young men are innocent, and this is over. For 1 hour, a former prosecutor tried to find out if they hold. Before we go anywhere, the facts. Nolan Xavier Wells was 18, Ocean Springs, Mississippi. Class of 2025 at Ocean Springs High School. He was playing football at Southwest Mississippi Community College, a wide receiver, and by every account from every direction, including from the people currently being accused, he was well liked. On the 4th of July 2026, he went out to Horn Island. That is a barrier island, roughly 10 miles off the Mississippi coast. There is no bridge. There is no road. You get there by boat and you leave by boat. He never left. 2 days later, on July 6th, a National Park Service ranger found his body along the northwestern shoreline of that island. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office said early that no foul play had been identified. His family did not accept that. They brought in Ben Crump. An independent autopsy came back undetermined on both cause and manner. The state autopsy still has not been released to the public. The district attorney has said the evidence stays sealed until it reaches a grand jury. And in the space where the answers should be, the internet built its own case. 3 young men became the center of it. Warren Hudson, Jax Patalo, Morgan Seymour. They were on Horn Island that day. They have not been charged with anything. No agency has named them as suspects. What they have received, according to their lawyers, is death threats. That is who was being defended on that broadcast. Hold that in your head, because it explains almost everything about how these 2 men behaved for the next hour. The show does not open with the lawyers. It opens with somebody else. That is Brandon Tatum, the Officer Tatum, 3.5 million subscribers. He got the first sit-down interviews in this case, and for a stretch of weeks his channel was the primary place this story was being told. And he says the young men took polygraphs and passed. Watch what happens next. Watch how carefully she walks him backward.
There's a big honking mark, subcutaneous, deep reddening tissue on his occipital. If I hit somebody in the back of the head, it'd be right there.
There was no indication that there was any kind of contusions on the hand, the arm, no kind of defensive event.
Back to Officer Tatum, star of The Officer Tatum on YouTube. Have the friends taken polygraphs?
Well, from my understanding, all but I believe one took a polygraph, and from what was told to me that they all passed. And all of the ones that took a polygraph took one without a lawyer. And they cooperated with law enforcement. So from my understanding, everybody took a polygraph test. Why do you say that's
from what you understand? Did they tell you they took a poly and passed?
Yes, ma'am. They told me that they did it. I wasn't there. So that's what I'm saying from my understanding. They told me that all the boys except one, which is Warren, I believe, took a polygraph test. All of them did not have lawyers and did it and cooperated with police. Warren also cooperated with police. I just believe he didn't take a lie detector test, but Warren is the young man that I interviewed. So according to what they told me, they all took a lie detector test and passed. And it's an equivalent of a lie detector test. It's not a traditional lie detector test, but it's the same theology of trying to get to if a person is lying. I don't know the name of it. It's an equivalent of a lie detector test. It's a different methodology. I don't believe it was a polygraph test. I believe they took other stressors in order to analyze if the people were telling the truth or not. So then the answer to
did they take a polygraph would be no. That is Officer Tatum from The Officer Tatum on YouTube. Joining us tonight are 2 very special guests. They are convinced of the friends And when I say quoties, I don't mean they are or they're not friends, because I don't know. The young men on the Triton boat that took Nolan Wells to Horn Island, many argue he was on the boat on the return when foul play occurred. Many argue he was not. In fact, the timeline has blown up because there are reports that Nolan Wells was seen on the island after the friend's boat left, which would exonerate them. Is that true? I don't know, and I'm trying to find out. For me, nobody's guilty and everybody's a suspect because we don't know the truth yet. But we will. Joining us tonight, Tyler Cox, the lawyer for several of the young men with the law firm Taylor and Cox, him being the Cox. Also with us, another veteran trial lawyer, Edward Pulsick, attorney for the boys as well. Actually, they're not boys. They're adults in the eyes of the law due to their age. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us tonight. My first question to clear up this matter, have your clients taken polygraphs? First to you, Tyler Cox.
Nancy, my clients have not taken a polygraph test. And I can tell you why. Because any lawyer worth their salt is going to tell their clients not to take a polygraph test under any circumstances. Two of my clients went in and made statements with me. We're not going to not going to do a polygraph test because, one, as you know, they're not admissible in court. And so it wasn't going to be admissible anyway. You should never, ever, if you're a lawyer, allow your clients to take a polygraph test. Now, we allowed investigators from the jump to have access to their phones, their Life 360, everything. We have cooperated implicitly every step of the way. But no, they didn't take polygraph tests. But what I'll tell you is one of the other boys, who I won't mention their name, but I'm sure that you've heard, took one. The girl that Nolan was with took a stress analysis voice test, and so did the other boy. So that's the test they took. Both of them passed. And so, again, no lawyer worth of salt is going to tell his clients to take a polygraph test or anything like that.
I would like to corroborate part of what Tyler Cox just said. Any defense attorney, whether they're truly convinced their client is innocent or guilty, they're not going to allow a poly. I've never seen that. I've had a couple of lawyers, maybe 3, in all the years I practiced, all the people I put behind bars, consent before trial to a poly. 3. And they were all criminal cases that carried severe penalties. So what he's saying is true. Even if you think your client is innocent, very rarely will you see a defense lawyer say, sure, take a poly. However, I disagree with you regarding their admittance into court. Polygraphs are allowed in civil trials. O.J. Simpson, he flunked horribly. And if both sides stipulate to the polygraph's admittance before the polygraph is taken, it can come into a criminal trial. The reality is that never happens. That never happens.
Right. At the time that we first cooperated with police, the first very week, the days after, just 1 to 2 days after the disappearance of Nolan Wells, we're not thinking about a civil suit. We're not thinking about that. We're thinking about how can we provide as much information to authorities so that they can find Nolan Wells. And it was not until after we spoke to officers and investigators that Nolan, unfortunately, his body was found on Horn Island, washed up. And it's unfortunate. And I hate that for Nolan because by all accounts, he was an incredible person. He was just truly remarkable in almost every sense of the word. But I mean, we're not thinking about a civil suit at that point in time, we're trying to help authorities find her friend, who we can't find either.
She asks whether that is what he understands or what he knows, and he tells her the truth. They told him he was not there. Notice that. He says, "from my understanding," 4 separate times. He is not claiming to have witnessed anything, and then the whole thing comes apart. He admits it was not a traditional polygraph. He says it was the same methodology. He says he does not know the name of it, and she lands it in one sentence. Did they take a polygraph? No. Stop there. A polygraph is a specific instrument. It measures several physiological channels at the same time: breathing, skin conductance, cardiovascular activity. Its reliability is argued about by people far more qualified than me, and it is not admissible in most courtrooms. But it is a defined test with a defined protocol. What Tatum is describing and cannot name is something else. A voice stress analysis, different instrument, different science, and its standing is weaker than the polygraph, not stronger. They passed a lie detector is not the same sentence as a voice stress test did not flag them. And this had already happened once. She had challenged him on this exact point on a previous appearance, so she knew what she was walking into when she rolled that tape. Here is the part that matters more than the test. Nobody in that clip is necessarily lying. Somebody told Tatum a version. Tatum repeated it with a qualifier attached. The qualifier fell off in the retelling, and within a week, the boys all passed polygraphs was being posted in comment sections as settled fact. It was not settled fact. And the person about to say so is the last person you would expect. The lawyers come on. She does not warm them up. First question, straight at it. Have your clients taken polygraphs? And Tyler Cox says no. His clients have not taken a polygraph test. There it is. The attorney of record for Warren Hudson, Jax Patalo, and Morgan Seymour just said, flatly, on national television, that his clients did not take a polygraph. That is not a nuance. That is a contradiction of what the biggest platform covering this case had told its audience. And I want to be fair, because his explanation is the strongest piece of legal reasoning anybody offers all hour. He says no lawyer worth their salt lets a client take a polygraph under any circumstances. He is right. And then the second attorney backs him up in a way I think he did not fully intend. Edward Paltzik says any defense attorney, whether they are truly convinced their client is innocent or guilty, is not going to allow a polygraph. Innocent or guilty. He just said the advice does not change based on what the lawyer believes. Which means refusing a polygraph tells you nothing about guilt. Nothing. He is correct about that. And if you have been treating they wouldn't take a lie detector as evidence of anything, that is your answer, and it came from the defense. Cox does add a detail. He says one of the other young men, who he will not name, and the young woman Nolan spent part of that day with, both took a voice stress analysis, and both passed. So the claim was never nothing. It was just never what people were repeating. And that is the shape of this entire case in one exchange. A thing that is roughly true, sharpened into a thing that is not, and then corrected by the very people it was supposed to protect. Now she turns to the second lawyer and asks him something simple. How did you get involved in this case? And he says he would rather not talk about that. She cannot believe it. Neither could I. You never say that to a former prosecutor on live television. He recovers fast. He explains it was a friend of a friend, somebody who knows the Ocean Springs community well, who connected him to Tyler Cox. He says the two of them hit it off. He says they both drive blue pickup trucks, so they started calling themselves the Blues Brothers. He says he then met Warren, Morgan, and Jax, and immediately decided he wanted to help them. That is probably completely true. And probably completely boring. But the instinct to withhold is the tell, and in an information environment this poisoned, every unexplained gap gets filled by the audience with the worst available theory. He handed the internet a gap. Now, here is what the broadcast never quite spells out, and you need it to understand everything that follows. Edward Andrew Paltzik is not a general practice lawyer who wandered into a Mississippi case. He is a defamation attorney. He has represented Donald Trump in high-profile media disputes. He was brought in specifically because of what was being said online about these three young men, and he and Cox have publicly announced they intend to come after people they believe have defamed their clients. That reframes the entire hour. Nobody has been charged. There is no criminal case to defend, so this is not a criminal defense posture. This is reputation litigation, conducted in public by a specialist in exactly that, which is not a criticism. If I had 3 unindicted young men receiving credible threats, I would hire that lawyer too. But it means every answer you are about to hear was shaped by a strategy, and the strategy is not assist the investigation. The strategy is win the narrative. Once you see that, the rest of the interview stops being confusing. Quick thing before the timeline, and the timeline is where this whole case turns. Subscribe. This story moves fast, and a large amount of what is circulating about it is flatly wrong, including names, including the audio, including that polygraph claim. We check it, and we tell you when something has not been confirmed. That is the whole channel.
Edward Paltzik joining us in addition to Tyler Cox, both of them veteran trial lawyers. He is with Taylor Dykema. Edward, how did you get involved in this case?
Well, I'd rather not talk about that. I can just tell you this. I can tell you that it was through a friend of a friend.
You're kidding, right? You're kidding me. Because when you tell me I'd rather not answer,
Well, I want to
That's
protect
just
the names. I wanna
igniting
protect the
me
na-
to find out how
Well,
you
hold
got
on.
involved in the
Well,
case.
Well, hold on. I can tell you a little bit more. I can tell you this. I can tell you a close friend who knows the Ocean Springs, Mississippi community very, very well, is from the area, connected me to a friend of his. And then I found myself speaking to Tyler here. And Tyler and I instantly became very close friends. We both have blue pickup trucks, so now we're the Blues Brothers. We just became very close. We hit it off. Then I had the opportunity to speak to Warren, speak to Morgan, speak to Jax, and we hit it off also. And I immediately realized these are incredibly fine young men. I realized
Okay,
right
hold
away
on.
I wanted to help
Ed,
them out.
Ed, to you and Tyler, I'm not saying they have lied, and I'm not saying they haven't lied. I don't know. I have no reason to disbelieve your clients or to believe them. But you do know that people can look you right in the face and lie through your teeth, and you believe them. I've done it. I've had witnesses that I found out were lying to me, and it was a huge blow. I've had police officers. I worked a child trafficking case. My first child trafficking case. Worked it. I finally found the little girl. I went into a room full of sex workers. They went, she's in there. I'm like, there's no child in there. They went, she's the one in the white boots. She looked like she was 38 years old. She's 14. That said, we won the case. But fast forward about 10 months later, I was walking through the grand jury room and I saw these horrible federal court sketches. I'm like, oh my stars, is that who I think it is? It was my vice cops. They had been stealing from dopers and they got indicted by the feds. And I had been out on the street with them every day for months trying to prove a child trafficking case. So, just because somebody tells you the sky is blue does not mean the sky is blue. You do know that, right?
Well, I can tell you this: they were off Horn Island at 4:30 p.m. on July 4th, and Nolan Wells was seen alive.
Now we're getting somewhere. How can you prove
let
that to me other than them telling you? I assume you've got GPS tracking and the call to CETO?
We have witnesses among other things, but I can also tell you this: they were off the island at 4:30 p.m. and Nolan Wells was seen alive by multiple people at 6 p.m. still on the island. And I'm sure Tyler would be happy to elaborate on that. But this is a no doubt
good.
100%.
Please tell me, Tyler.
Yes.
because I don't
Yes.
believe any of these people and I don't disbelieve any of these people. I want to hear about witnesses that spotted him alive after 4:30 because I believe I can confirm the boat left around 4:30. And I'm referring to the Triton. That's the boat they were
Well,
on.
so
There are a lot of boats. Let's see the video of all the boats out there. So when I say Triton, I'm talking about the boat Nolan was on the way to the island. There's a lot of boats out there and a lot of witnesses too. This is from the Officer Tatum. Okay. There are witnesses placing him there at 6. And I want to be very clear, gentlemen, that I'm not convinced he drowned just because somebody said so. Even if he did drown, that does not mean that there wasn't foul play. Why is that mark on the back of his head? Was he hit on the head and fell in the water? Was he held under the water? Was it an accident? I don't know. But I am very
Response.
interested in witnesses that place him alive at 6 p.m. Please tell me, Tyler Cox.
So, Nancy, look, we have had multiple witnesses reach out to us, 2 confirmed witnesses that saw Nolan Wells on the island around 6 p.m. on July 4th, well after the Triton, as you said, left around 4:30. And so those witnesses have went to investigators, they've talked to the police, and they've done what they're supposed to do. We've cooperated 100%. So has
Where did they
those
see him,
witnesses.
Tyler Cox? Where did the witnesses see them? Do they know him well enough to make a positive ID? Hey, speaking of a positive ID, control room, please pull up a photo that we showed a couple of days ago. There are 2 or 3 women, white females, walking along the beach, as I recall, each clad in a bikini. There is one, I believe, a white male and one black male walking with them. That, can you zoom in a little bit? That's not really helping me that much. For instance, did your witnesses know Nolan? Can they identify him? Because I'm looking right at this and I cannot identify if the male behind the female on the white, the female wearing a white hat, I can't tell if that's Nolan or not. It's a very blurry photo. I can't make it out. So, do your witnesses know him? I mean, let me see my guess, please. Mr. Polczyk, Mr. Cox, I know the 2 of you. I don't see both of them. There they are. The 2 of you have tried a lot of cases, as have I. To get in or attack an eyewitness, and it's in the code, the official code of Mississippi annotated. There are prescribed methods under which you cross-examine an eyewitness. For instance, does the witness know the target? Was the lighting sufficient? How far away was the witness? What were the conditions of the eyewitness identification? Was the eyewitness inebriated or high or otherwise incapacitated? How far away were they? Do they wear glasses? It goes on and on and on. It's laid out in the code. Tell me about these witnesses. How do they know it was Nolan? Hey, control room, show me that picture of Nolan on the boat. He's bent over. All I can see are his legs and his behind. The only reason I think that's Nolan is because it matches his swimsuit. Did they see that? How can they identify Nolan? First to you, Tyler.
Well, I'm not sure if the witnesses saw that picture that you just put on screen, but I can confirm to you that these witnesses know Nolan. They've known him for a long time. They were able to make a positive ID. And they told that to investigators. They told them that from the very start.
Had they been drinking?
That I do not know.
How are they sure it was 6 o'clock? Look, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm asking the questions I would ask in court. How do they know it was 6 o'clock? Did they go, oh, there's Nolan Wells at 6 p.m.?
Well, I'm pretty sure, Nancy, they were aware of the time. I'm not sure if they were drinking or not, but they're the ones that came forward to police and investigators, and that's their story to tell. What I'm telling you is they made a positive ID on Nolan Wells. around 6 o'clock, and they told that to investigators, all while our clients were off the island around 4:30. So we have positive identification on Nolan on the island an hour and a half after our clients left. So, as you know from your experience as a prosecutor, they can't do two things at once. They can't be on the island at 6 o'clock and be on the boat gone off the island at 4:30. So that's where we are. Our clients have nothing to do with the death of Nolan Wells. We don't know how he died. We want to know. Please tell us. Somebody. We want to know just as much as anyone else. Our clients loved Nolan Wells. They were brothers to Nolan Wells. I've still yet to hear one bad thing about Nolan Wells. He was a good Ocean Springs kid. Just as Chuck Bordeaux says all the time in the courtroom, these are good Ocean Springs people. So Nolan was a good Ocean Springs person too. They love Nolan. We want to know. Will someone
Okay,
please
just stop right there,
tell us?
Tyler. Tyler, I've got 1 hour, and nobody's running for miscongeniality. Let's just let it be noted, judicial notice. They were all good. Everybody's good. Okay. Tyler,
Yes.
the witnesses that came forward, here's something that would tend to corroborate them, is if multiple witnesses said the same thing. Witnesses separated in time and space, witnesses that are not all friends, witnesses that are not good friends with your clients, that may have a reason to be fuzzy on the time. I'm not saying they are or that they're not. Here's my question to you. Are these witnesses friends of your clients?
I don't think they're friends, and they're not even the same age.
Okay. Next question. How many witnesses place him there on the island at 6-ish?
At least two that I know.
2. Do the witnesses know each other?
Yes.
Were they together that day?
Yes.
Have they had a chance to discuss their recollections with each other before they came to police?
Well, I'm sure they did. Nancy, look, they did what they were supposed to do, and they spoke to police officers. And you know as well as I do that if investigators or a DA's office had any sort of probable cause to make an arrest in a case like this, they would. They would have.
Or they may be gathering evidence to make sure they've got all the evidence that there is. I mean, I would wait until I had all the evidence, including a completed autopsy. You know what? I'm going to jump ahead. But regarding the body, regarding Nolan's body, we've heard all sorts of inflammatory things. But the one thing that, well, many things are very interesting and probative. For instance, why was Nolan's neck of so much interest to the original medical examiner that it was removed? His foot wasn't removed. His toe wasn't removed. His ear wasn't removed. Why his neck? The lungs and the neck were removed, which obviously Edward Pulsick touches on COD, cause of death. I understand why the medical examiner took his lungs. He had to run tests on them to determine, did he drown? Of course, all three of us know you can drown and there still be foul play. Somebody whacked you on the head. If somebody held you underwater, it could be any number of things. Or it could be an innocent drowning. But why the throat? What was curious about the throat, Ed? Were there marks on the throat? Was there a ligature mark? Was there manual strangulation? Was there a compression? Were there bruises? Were there scratches? I don't know. Was a hyoid missing? I could go on, but I won't. Do either of you know what was of interest to the medical examiner in the removal of Nolan's throat?
I'll tell you this. Listen, we're not coroners. We're not medical examiners. We want to know what happened to him just as much as everyone else. Quite frankly, more. Because Nolan was their best friend. Warren, Morgan, Jax. Nolan was their best friend. We want to know what happened. We haven't examined Nolan's body. We're not scientists.
I just
We
thought
can
maybe you had been
Yeah.
somehow told why they took his throat. Okay, that's a no. We don't know
Yeah,
why they took his
yeah.
throat.
Yeah, we don't want to speculate.
Let me start with
exactly.
an open-ended question to you gentlemen. I started with why haven't they taken a polygraph? I want to hear what your clients are saying happened that day, because my interest is piqued because you stated a young lady, and I assume this is Katie, the mysterious Katie, who turns out not to be that mysterious at all. Much was made of that. Now, one thing about Katie, originally, one or some of your clients said he was with some girl, we don't know her. Then it turned out they had been texting with her, so they did know her. There may be an innocent explanation for that or not. So, explain to me, who were they talking about when they said he was with a girl, we don't know her? He had never met her before, but yet they were texting with Katie, the girl he had been with. I'll throw that to you, Tyler. Do you know the answer to that?
Sure. So they didn't know Katie, and they believe that Nolan didn't know Katie before that day. But you have to remember, once they started getting suspicious that Nolan wasn't with them anymore, they start asking themselves, okay, well, where's Nolan? They start texting everyone that they knew. Hey, have you seen Nolan? Do you know where Nolan is? Did he make it back home? All before they called Christine Wells that night, they start asking everybody. And so eventually they end up getting, through mutual friends, whoever, Katie's number. And so and I believe it was maybe either Snapchat or text message. They got in communication with Katie. And Katie says, I don't know. We thought he was leaving with y'all. Well, I don't believe that's the case, obviously, because he did not leave with our boys. We don't know what happened to him, but that's Katie's statement. That's how they got a hold of Katie's numbers, because they're frantically trying to find out what happened to Nolan.
What's your take on it, Ed? Because I think he's saying they did know Katie. I couldn't tell if he said did or didn't. Did he say they all did know Katie?
No, they did not.
They didn't know Katie. All right. And they
Did not.
determined who she was. Okay.
Right.
Hey, hold on. Tyler, you stated your clients, began to get suspicious, whereas Nolan. When did they get suspicious?
It was later that night. I believe it was around 9 or 10 o'clock, maybe even 11, that they start saying, oh, well, has anyone seen Nolan? Where's Nolan? Did he make it back home? Does anybody know? They start calling around, texting, asking everybody. And once they determined that no one had the answer about where Nolan was, that's when they called Christine Wells. And then they stay on the phone. My client stayed on the phone with Christine Wells for about 5 or 6 minutes. And then he tells her, look, I'm going to call the Coast Guard just to make sure. And he did. He stays on the phone with the Coast Guard for 21 minutes.
Now, the argument. Paltzik lays it out twice, and both times it is the same two numbers. They were off Horn Island at 4:30 on July 4th. And Nolan Wells was seen alive by multiple people at 6 o'clock, still on the island. If that is true, it is finished. That is not spin. That is a real argument, and she says so herself. She tells them that everything else disappears for her if that is true. So let me give you the outside verification, because half of this is not just lawyers talking. The GPS data on that boat has been reported publicly. It shows the vessel departed Horn Island at 4:31 in the afternoon. It reached Fort Bayou at 5:52. It docked at 6:06. That is not a memory. That is not a witness. That is a machine writing down a number, and the number matches what these two men are saying. And Paltzik has made the second half of the claim elsewhere with more precision than he uses here. On the Officer Tatum show, he said 2 members of the Ocean Springs community saw Nolan Wells at about 10 minutes to 6, not a vague around 6, 10 of 6, 5:50. That precision helps him. A vague hour is a feeling. A specific 10-minute mark is somebody who looked at something. So take the defense argument at full strength, the way you should always take an argument before you test it. The boat left at 4:31. Documented. Two people who knew Nolan say they saw him alive at 5:50, an hour and 19 minutes later. If both halves hold, those three young men were out on the water heading home while Nolan Wells was still walking around on that island. She does not reject it. She does something harder than rejecting it. She starts running the eyewitness framework. Does the witness know the target? Was the lighting sufficient? How far away were they? Were they impaired? Do they wear glasses? She is not inventing that. That is the standard framework for challenging an eyewitness identification, and she points out it is laid out in Mississippi's own code. Then she starts asking, do your witnesses know him? Cox says yes. They have known Nolan for a long time. They made a positive identification. They told investigators from the start. Strong answer. Had they been drinking? He does not know. How are they sure it was 6? He is pretty sure they were aware of the time. Weaker. But then come the 3 that actually matter, and watch how fast they go. Are these witnesses friends of your clients? He does not think so. Do the witnesses know each other? Yes. Were they together that day? Yes. Did they have a chance to discuss what they saw with each other before they came to police? And Cox says he is sure they did. Here is why those questions came in that order. 2 independent witnesses who never met each other, who were standing in different places, who came forward separately and told the same story. That is powerful. That is corroboration. 2 people who were together, who saw the same thing at the same moment, and who talked it through before they ever spoke to police. That is something else. It might still be perfectly accurate. Most of the time it is. People who were together really did see the same thing. But it is not 2 data points. It is 1 observation with 2 mouths. And a defense attorney would take that apart in about 90 seconds if it were pointed the other way, at his client. She knows, because she has watched them do it for 30 years. Give Cox credit here. He did not dodge a single one of those. He could have hedged. He said yes, yes, and probably. The answers are just what the answers are. Then she turns to the body, and this is the hardest part of the hour.
Okay. Ed Pulsick, also veteran trial lawyer. Ed, do you concur with that explanation of why they first said, I don't know her, we don't know her, he didn't know her, and then we find out that they had actually been texting with Katie? What's your understanding of that? Again, I had my favorite trial judge, Luther Alverson, would tell every jury, it is your duty to make all witnesses speak the truth. What does that mean? To reconcile the different seemingly conflicting stories to make everyone be telling the truth and impugn perjury on no one. So maybe there's an explanation for this. Why did they say, we don't know her, and then they're texting her? So they did know her.
That characterization, they didn't say that. There's no contradiction. I can just tell you this. They didn't know her. Nolan was with her much of the day. And he was still on the island when they left. He apparently spent much of the day with this young lady. That seems to be what happened. But no, there was this young lady was not part of their friend group. That's right.
Okay, so when they say they didn't know her, but yet they were texting her, they did know her name.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that characterization. Yeah, the
well,
premise.
enlighten me. I want to know.
Is flawed. Yeah, the premise is flawed. She's not part of their friend group. They don't know her. I can tell you that it does appear, once again, it appears that Nolan was with this young lady for much of the day. That does seem to be confirmed by many witnesses. And I can tell you this, Nancy, one thing about this island, I did have the opportunity to go to Horn Island. And when you go to the island, everything starts to make sense. The first picture was maybe not so accurate. If you go to the part of Horn Island where, these events all occurred, you see that there are really no trees on that part of the island. It's flat, it's open, there are no visual obstructions, so there's no trees, there's no shelter, there's no nothing, and it was broad daylight with thousands of people there, meaning there was no opportunity for foul play during daylight hours. And that's where this whole thing starts to unravel.
Ed,
You have to go to the island.
please, please.
You have to go to
There's
the island.
opportunity for foul play. He could have been whacked
Not
on
in
the
this
head on a
environment.
boat and
Not
pushed
in.
over. There's.
I'm telling you, not in this
It doesn't have to
environment.
be
I
on the
was there.
beach. It could
I'm
be
telling you.
anywhere.
You got to understand, it's a 10-mile long barrier island, but it's only a few hundred yards wide in most places. There's nowhere to hide.
Let me see the video and show it to Ed and Tyler. The video of all those boats. Anything could have happened between those boats. Anything.
Well, but
Even
but
an
Nancy,
accident could happen between those boats. And
but
so many
Nancy,
people are drunk, I don't think they're paying attention.
but here's the thing. Here's the thing, right? We could always say anything is possible. An asteroid could strike right now. But I am telling you that there are a lot of people who have talked about this case and have said things that are not true, and they haven't been to the island. They've got to go to the island. If you don't go to the island, you can't speak with authority about the case. And I won't name names, but a lot of people who have hurt these fine young men and have defamed them, they've never visited the island. And I'm willing to bet that they've never visited the islands. Look at it right there. That shot you have right there. Broad daylight with thousands of people there. The picture speaks for itself.
I agree with what you're saying. I agree that it would be nearly impossible for foul play to take place on that beach. Again, I direct your attention to the gathering of boats with the boats closely together. Everybody's drinking, nobody's paying attention. Like, I can't tell what's going on between the boats at a distance. I don't know. I don't know what's happening in the water. I don't know. That
I can tell you
said,
this.
I agree. I don't think anything
Yes.
happened out in the plain view on the beach. But there
Yes.
are other
And
alternatives.
I want to add, though, we have a difference of opinion. When I see that video of the boats in the water there, that also is not a good place to get away with murder. Now, we have been very careful. We have refrained from speculation. We have refrained from guessing, and we're going to continue to do that. However, plain view of that scene, the beach, the boats, the water, that is not a secretive environment. It just isn't.
I agree the beach is not secretive, and I also agree the whole island is not secretive because there's really nowhere to hide there anyway. Guys, let me move to the boat, the Triton. Has the boat been searched by authorities?
I do not believe that it has been searched by authorities, but it's been available to authorities this entire time. If authorities wanted to come see it, they're more than able to, and have been.
Okay, I find that very interesting, Tyler, and I'll tell you why. In so many cases that I've prosecuted and covered and investigated, you see defendants, targets, trying to get rid of evidence. You see them cleaning the boat. You see them washing it down. You see them trying all sorts of methods to get rid of evidence. It's interesting to me and somewhat probative that your clients have offered the boat up to law enforcement to come and search it. I'm curious, has the boat not just been searched with the naked eye? Has luminol been used on the boat? Has alternative light sources been used on the boat? Has a cadaver dog come to the boat? Has a scent dog come to the boat? To your knowledge, either one of you.
To my knowledge, Nancy, I do not believe that has happened. But again, my three clients, either one of them, none of them own that boat. So if it has, you would have to ask the owners.
Tyler, do I look like I just fell off the turnip truck? Maybe I do, because we did sell turnips at the farmer's market when I was growing up. That said, you telling me my clients don't own the boat, so you'd have to ask the owner. Come on. You and Paulsick know if the boat has been searched. You know if cadaver dogs or scent dogs, luminol or alternative light has been used on the boat. Can you just tell me? Yes, no. It's not your client's fault. It's law enforcement's fault if they haven't done it.
If authorities thought that there was something to find on that boat, don't you think this far out they would have already done it?
I would think in the ordinary course of an investigation into potential foul play, I would have gone out there and done it. Just
That's
Asking-
if you
well,
believe
you're
there was
asking-
potential foul play.
just to say I searched it and it was clean. I didn't find
Well,
any
Nancy,
human blood.
Well,
The
Nancy,
cadaver
you're
dog
asking a
didn't
valid.
hit.
Hold on, you're asking a valid question. You're just asking the wrong people. That's a question for law enforcement.
To your knowledge, has it been searched? Have you been told by anyone that it was searched?
I don't have
I have
any
not been told
involvement
that,
with the
no.
law enforcement. I don't have any involvement in the investigation.
Her question is blunt. Why was Nolan's neck of so much interest to the original medical examiner that it was removed? Here is the grounding from the independent autopsy that Crump's team released on July 22nd in Chicago. The pathologist who performed the second examination reported that neck structures and organs were not in the body when he received it. They had been retained during the first autopsy. Because of that, he wrote that he could not rule out injury to the neck as a contributor or a cause of death. He also could not directly examine the airway and the lungs for water or the stomach contents. Those are the things you look at to assess a drowning. He could not look at them. He documented red discoloration in the soft tissue at the back of the head and stated the cause of it was unclear. His conclusion on cause and manner was undetermined. Now her question is, why the neck? And the honest answer, which she partly supplies herself, is that retaining neck structures is routine. The National Association of Medical Examiners has published on this. You keep them for further radiographic examination, particularly where there is any question about compression or fracture. Multiple forensic pathologists have said publicly that this is standard and not by itself suspicious. But routine and meaningful are not opposites. The first medical examiner kept those structures for a reason. That reason has not been made public because the state autopsy has not been released. And the second pathologist, working without them, could not answer the question. So the only office that can resolve it is the one office saying nothing. To their credit, neither lawyer plays doctor. Cox says they are not coroners and not medical examiners. Paltzik says they do not want to speculate. That is the correct answer, and I am not going to punish them for it. They do not know. I do not know. Nobody making a confident video about that autopsy right now knows. Then she raises the young woman. The broadcast calls her Katie. National reporting has since identified her as Katie McCormack, 19 years old, and I am going to say this once and clearly. She has not been accused of anything by anyone. There is no basis to attach her name to wrongdoing, and I am not doing it. The question is about a specific inconsistency. Some of the clients said he was with a girl they did not know. Then it emerged they had been texting with her. Cox gives a coherent answer. He says they did not know her, and they believe Nolan did not know her before that day. He says once they realized Nolan was not accounted for, they started texting everyone they could think of. Have you seen Nolan? Did he make it home? They well, and eventually, through mutual friends, they got her contact and reached her, and she said she thought he had left with them. That explanation holds. Getting somebody's number through mutual friends at 11 at night while you are frantically hunting for a missing person is not sinister. That is what any of us would do. But then watch the other lawyer. Paltzik says that characterization is wrong. They did not say that. There is no contradiction. He says the premise is flawed. And then Cox repeats it. The premise is flawed. That is a different move entirely. Cox answered the question, Paltzik attacked the question, and then Cox followed him. Here is the innocent explanation for that inconsistency, and there is no inconsistency, are not the same answer. The first one engages, the second one refuses to admit there was ever anything there. And there was something there. Katie McCormack's sister, Gracie, told the Daily Mail that Katie's understanding was that Nolan was getting ready to board the boat he came out on, and that Katie assumed the friends telling him to get on that boat would not have left him. That is a genuine conflict between two accounts of the same moment. Crump put it plainly. One side says he went to get on the boat, the other says he did not. Somebody's recollection is wrong. That does not make anyone a liar. Human memory is terrible, and every person on that island had been in the sun and the heat all day. But you do not make a conflict disappear by calling the question flawed. If this breakdown is doing something for you, drop a comment with what you think the single biggest unanswered question in this case is. Not a theory, a question. I read them, and the good ones end up in the next video. Now it gets tense. Has the boat been searched by authorities? Cox does not believe it has been, but he says it has been available to them the entire time. And she does something generous here that I want you to catch, because it cuts against the narrative people expect from her. She says she finds it interesting and somewhat probative that his clients offered the boat up. She means it. In her experience, people who did something scrub the boat. They wash it down. They do not hand it over and say, "Come look." So she asks the obvious follow-up. Not searched by eye, luminol, alternative light sources, a cadaver dog, a scent dog. And Cox says he does not believe that has happened. But then he adds that none of his 3 clients own that boat, so you would have to ask the owners. And she is not having it. She asks him if he thinks she just fell off the turnip truck. Here is why she is irritated, and here is why I think she is right. The vessel was a 22-foot 2022 Triton TRX. Ownership matters for who can consent to a search. That is real. But the question was not, can you consent to a search? The question was, do you know whether it happened? And you would have to ask the owners is not an answer to a yes or no question about a fact. Then he reframes it. He tells her it is a valid question. She is just asking the wrong people. It is a question for law enforcement. He says he has no involvement in the investigation. They are conducting their own investigation. That last sentence is doing an enormous amount of work. They are conducting their own investigation. They went to the island. They took Warren and Jax back out there on August 7th. They have interviewed witnesses. Paltzik has said publicly that his team gathered evidence and turned it over to authorities. You cannot run a parallel investigation, produce witnesses, produce a timeline, hand material to police, and then tell a national audience you have no involvement in the investigation the moment the question gets uncomfortable. Either you are gathering facts or you are not. Next, the call. And I have to correct something, because most of the coverage gets this wrong, and the transcript itself butchers it 4 different ways. It was a call to Sea Tow. That is a private marine towing company, not 911, not the Coast Guard, not a government agency. Around 4 in the afternoon on July 4th, a teenager on that boat called a tow service and said the bilge pump had stopped working and they were taking on water near the west tip of Horn Island. The Mississippi Department of Marine Resources later released the audio. They did not receive the call. The tow was ultimately canceled. Another boat came and helped them instead. That recording has become the most contested piece of media in this entire case, because people have run it through enhancement software and reported hearing things underneath the noise. Different people hear different things. None of it has been confirmed by anyone official. Cox addresses it directly. Anybody can adjust the gain. Anybody can enhance it. But putting words over some audio does not make those words attributable to what is actually on the call. He is right, and this is important enough that I want to say it plainly in my own words. When you enhance degraded audio, you are not recovering hidden information. There is no hidden layer. You are amplifying what is already there, and you amplify the noise along with it. And when a listener has already been told what to expect, the brain fills the gap with the expected words. That is a documented perceptual effect. It is the same reason 100 people hear 100 different lyrics in one garbled song. Then Paltzik goes further. He says there are hundreds of versions of that call circulating online, many of them fake or altered or AI generated, and he says the people doing that may become the subject of 1 or more lawsuits. That is a defamation attorney putting the internet on notice, live, on cable news. Take that at face value, because he is not bluffing about what he does for a living. And here is the honest cost of all this. If there really are hundreds of altered versions of a piece of evidence circulating, then that evidence is finished as a public reference point. Nobody can tell you which file they heard. That serves nobody, least of all the family. Then comes Paltzik's strongest argument of the night, and it is geographic. He says when you go to the island, everything starts to make sense. No trees on that part of it, no shelter, no visual obstructions. Flat and open, broad daylight with thousands of people out there. And he points out that Horn Island is 10 miles long but only a few hundred yards wide in most places. Nowhere to hide. He did go. He and Cox took Warren Hudson and Jax Patalo back to Horn Island on August 7th. Cox described it publicly as an emotional afternoon, said they had to stop at points and give the young men space, including at the spot where Nolan's body was found. And she agrees with him. Partly. She says she agrees it would be nearly impossible for foul play to take place on that beach. Then she points at the water. She directs them to the video of all those boats gathered close together, everybody drinking, nobody paying attention. This is the sharpest disagreement of the hour, and neither of them is being unreasonable. His argument is about visibility on land. Thousands of people, flat open sand, no cover anywhere. Hers is that the beach is not the only surface out there. There is a raft of boats sitting in the water, people drinking all day, nobody watching, and from 100 yards off you cannot see what happens in the gaps between the hulls. And then he says the thing that I think actually damages him. He says if you have not gone to the island, you cannot speak with authority about the case. That is not an evidentiary standard. That is a credential test, and it is a convenient one, because virtually nobody can pass it. Investigators do not need to stand on a beach to evaluate GPS logs, phone extractions, or autopsy findings. Cases get solved every year by people who never saw the scene. He is entitled to say the island changed his own understanding. He is not entitled to make a boat ride the price of admission to having an opinion. Which brings us to the moment the interview breaks. He points to video that he says shows who was on that boat, and argues that Nolan is visibly not on it. She accepts that the images are convincing. She says so. And then she asks the one question you have to ask about any piece of media offered as evidence. Is there a timestamp? Count the deflections. He tells her she has been trying this case for over 30 days. He tells her the facts are the facts are the facts. He tells her there has never been one shred, one iota, one piece, nothing. He tells her that is not their burden and that she is putting the burden on them. 4 refusals. And then she says the best line of the entire hour. She tells him he did that to himself when he said, "Here is the boat that day," and he is not on it. She is exactly right, and this is basic logic, not law. He is correct that the burden of proof is not on his clients. They have not been charged. They owe the public nothing. In a courtroom, the state proves its case, and the defense can sit there in total silence. But that protection applies while you are silent. The moment you voluntarily walk onto a national broadcast and hold up an item as proof, you have made a claim. And a claim gets tested. You do not get to introduce evidence and then invoke the burden of proof to avoid questions about the evidence you just introduced. He does eventually answer, around 4:30, July 4th, which is probably true and consistent with the GPS. It took 4 deflections to produce a 1-sentence answer he had the entire time. And then this. He tells her they are going to protect their witnesses. They are not going to air out their names. She tells him she is not asking him to. And he says, "Well, it sounds like you are." She was not. She asked for a timestamp on a video. Nobody asked for a name. And I understand where the reflex comes from. He makes the case himself, and it is a serious one. He asks why in the world any witness would make themselves public after 30 days of death threats, in-person threats, credible threats. That is legitimate. The FBI's Jackson Field Office has been reported as investigating interstate threats connected to this case. Warren Hudson has shared recordings of threatening calls with local press. This is not theoretical, but protecting a witness and answering a question about metadata are not in conflict. Treating them as if they are makes the evidence look weaker than it probably is. He had a good piece of evidence. He defended it like a bad one. Last thread, and it may be the most consequential thing in this entire case. Do you know where Nolan's phone is? Cox says it has not been turned over. He says Ben Crump, working through local counsel, sent a letter that it went to Don Lemon on his show, and that Lemon confirmed the phone has not been given to investigators. Here is where that actually stands right now, and this is the freshest part of the whole story. Cox went on Dan Abrams' Sirius XM show and said he was willing to bet his reputation the family had not turned the phone over, and that investigators do not have it. The family's side answered. Attorney Ahmad R. Smith, of A.R. Smith Law, retained as local counsel for the Wells estate alongside Crump's team, sent a letter to Jackson County District Attorney Angel Myers McElrath, dated August 11th. It states they have been and remain ready and willing to cooperate in arranging a joint forensic inspection of the phone. It references discussion of the examination being conducted through a digital forensics lab, with possible FBI involvement. It says their position has not changed. So both things appear to be true at the same time. The examination has not happened. And the family says they are willing for it to happen, which means 5 weeks went by with everyone agreeing in principle and nobody in a room. Her instinct on this is correct. She says that is on investigators, because they need to get the phone and look at it. And when the lawyers ask how, she lists it. Warrant, subpoena deuces take 'em. Grand jury subpoena deuces take 'em. A judge's order. She is pointing at something real. If a device is material to a death investigation, there are established instruments to obtain it. Consent is one route. It has never been the only route. And she is blunt about why it matters so much. She asks whether it would put a lot of this to bed if we could simply look at the phone, look at the location data, look at the route. Yes, it would. Location history does not get tired. It does not get scared. It does not talk to a friend and revise itself afterward. On a case where every single human account is contested, the machine data is the closest thing to a neutral witness that exists. That cuts both ways, by the way. Cox says his clients surrendered their phones and allowed a full extraction from the very beginning. If that is accurate, those extractions exist right now in an evidence room, and they either support the 431 departure or they do not. All of it sealed until grand jury. That is the district attorney's stated position. So what did that hour actually establish? That a claim circulating everywhere that these young men took and passed polygraphs was not accurate, and the correction came from their own attorney. That the defense rests on a timeline, that the departure half of it is backed by GPS data, and that the arrival half rests on two people who knew each other, were together, and probably talked it over before they went to police. That neither lawyer knows whether that boat was ever forensically examined, and both decline to say who would know. That a video offered as exculpatory took 4 refusals before a date and time were attached to it. That a phone which could resolve a great deal has still not been examined, more than 5 weeks in, with each side pointing at the other. And that the two men paid to have answers admitted, out loud, that there are many things they do not know, and that they cannot say how Nolan Wells died. Which is more honesty than most of the internet is currently offering. Here is where I land. Warren Hudson, Jax Patalo, and Morgan Seymour have not been charged with anything. No law enforcement agency has named them as suspects. They are entitled to the presumption that they had nothing to do with this, and the threats aimed at them and their families are indefensible no matter what anybody believes happened out there. Nolan Wells is entitled to something too. A state autopsy that gets released. A phone that gets examined. A boat that gets processed or officially ruled out. Witnesses whose accounts get tested by investigators instead of argued about by strangers in comment sections. Those two things are not in competition. They are the same request. An 18-year-old went out to an island with people who say they loved him, and he did not come home. Everything after that is either evidence or it is noise. There is a reward outstanding for information leading to an arrest and conviction in this case. It stood at $125,000, and there have been reports of further pledges that could push it higher. If you were on Horn Island on the 4th of July, if you have original, unedited photos or video from that day, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office has asked for it directly. Somebody out there looked at a clock.